Getting the third part of the how-to series is taking a little while, so I'm going to reach deep back into the archives and pull out Use What You See run. 3 boss cells active. And this one is not so old that it's completely irrelevant in the most current update or anything like that, but it is old enough that there are a couple of changes. This was back when the Christmas present was still around. This was back when getting into the Watcher fight from the ramparts was the only 1 cell door. But everything else should be pretty much the same. So, use what you see. What is use what you see? Well, if I see it, I use it. For example, that sadistic dagger, some terrible affixes on it, but you know what? I saw it, so I'm going to use it. And that pretty much goes for everything. Even if it's if it's in a curse chest, I'm going to grab it. If it's behind a golden door, I will buy my way through the door. And if I can't buy my way through the door, man, I do not use the shelf shield enough. Just in general. If I can't buy my way through the door, I will get cursed. If I come across a shop like this, I will immediately try to, from the nearest point to the stock change, pick random items and then just try to grab every single one of the items until I run out of money. It is truly the most extreme version of this whole use what you see that you can possibly get. And so what do I have for as far as abilities to choose, well, like strategies? Choosing stuff? Obviously I need to pick up every single item, but I can still choose what slot that I'm going to put it into. I can still choose what my stat distribution is going to be, and as you can probably guess, since I'm going to be using everything, it is going to be across the board, all 3 stats. And since I'm going to be getting cursed an awful lot, alienation is the most obvious mutation to take out of all of them. I don't think that there is anyone that could possibly be more useful. I certainly do not take enough cursed chests when I'm normally playing the game, so getting in here and really trying to get as many as possible, especially because I'm taking one of the harder routes in the game. By the way, that is a decent combo, the grab and then infantry grenade. You can do that pretty regularly with those 2 weapons, so not a bad usage. Yes, and another thing, and the main reason why, strap yourself in, this is going to be a long one, is because I'm going to be exploring every single corner of every single part of every single biome I go into. So it's a bit longer of a run than I usually get. Generally what I do is I try to check out getting as many stats as possible, and then after getting a decent amount, or enough really, I'll get on to the next biome and not worry too much about going to the 4 corners of each area. Here's the first example of this is not even a thing that I can use, the Hunter's Grenade. However, I'm going to take it anyway because, hey, that's part of the run. I believe that this route does take me through the sepulcher, and that will also include taking the nightlight, even though I've never really needed that. This is not a full clear. As far as fighting all the enemies, I don't really feel like that's absolutely necessary, even though you could easily make it part of the constraints to be under. Yeah, alienation, no question. So I'm going to fight a decent amount of enemies in this because, well, I got to go to every single part of every single level. But that does not necessarily mean that I am forced to fight everything. And don't even think that I'm going to be getting any of the time doors. That's just not going to happen. Aside from that, it's a good thing that alienation works after you get a curse, because if it only worked for the curse that you just got, that would be a real issue, having 30 here right at the start. You know, it's kind of surprising how many hoops you got to jump through to get the Hunter's Grenade in the start. Whether it's spending most of the money that you get off of the whatever the gold retention general upgrade is. Also, that was super close to getting hit by that scorpion there. This is not a great mix-up. I would much rather have the grappling hook. I'd much rather have the grappling hook infantry grenade because I thought that was working out pretty decently, but I suppose nothing's particularly good when you get cursed. I do think that in this run I did not happened to come across a cursed sword, which is great, because that could have been a real issue. For example, this sadistic sword is taking... well, has me taking a lot more damage, and that's risky enough as it is, for example, right there. Even if I'm able to regen health, I've never thought that that affix has been particularly good or worthwhile, because you're taking so much... I've described parrying as a feast or famine mechanic, and I think that that affix is the ultimate one. You are either staying at just full health or nearly full health the entire time that you're playing, or you're almost immediately dying because you're taking 2.5 times damage, which is just a huge amount. It's part of being able to choose my... well, what slot I'm going to be going into. There's no question that I want to try to get rid of the Hunter's Grenade immediately. This is still 3-cell mode, and I'm not going to be working with a whole lot of damage, so having a slot being taken up by nothing right now is not really doing me any favors. You know, the Hunter's Grenade, I may have only used that thing, because that came out after I had gotten all of the... oh, fun. Hey, I can at least get rid of that terrible affix as having me taking way more damage. Yeah, I had all of the blueprints in the game prior to that finally being implemented in the Brutal update. That was originally supposed to be in the start, but I guess was having trouble. They were having trouble getting it spawning properly. As always, Hunter's longbow, pretty great weapon. I was saying that I was going to be pretty low on damage for this run because I'm building every single stat. I'm building each stat individually, but I think that that will help quite a bit for the short amount of time that I can possibly have. Yeah, Hunter's Grenade was not working at the very start of the Brutal update, and by the time that it was working, I already had all of the blueprints. I think that doing the how-to run is the first time that I have managed to... here's where I get confused a lot. Couldn't really tell what was going on. You know, it's weird. You can see yourself in between those, but... you can see yourself in between the little lattice parts of those, but it's still not very easy to do so. Also, I cannot believe that didn't get the critical there. Yeah, still trying to do the how-to thing, and that has me using the Hunter's Grenade for the first time in quite a while. And it's not difficult. All you need is CC, but it's interesting you still got to pay most of your gold at the very start of the game to get it, and if you don't, you have to take a really hefty curse right off the bat. Finally. Also another one of those things where I meant to sell the Hunter's Grenade, but accidentally hit the go back portion, the go back whatever tablet instead. Oh, this may have also been before they changed up the crow's wings a little bit. I know that for whatever reason, most popular video on my channel is using the original version of the crow's wings, which just forces you upwards. But now I think there's a little bit more of a... these days, there's a little bit more of the pull down on it. You're not able to just fly up in the air if you... yeah, here's where I buy everything and go. And it's choose random each time. Oh man, that was a starting shield. Jeez. Yeah, it used to be a lot more consistent with the height that you were floating above the ground initially with the crow's wings, which made it a lot weirder, but also maybe a bit too powerful. I can understand them changing it up. I'm not entirely sure in what ways it eventually changed, but I still have to go see at some point. I know so much for that Frantic Sword. I'll miss you, Frantic Sword. I'll have to go see if you can still do that thing where you can fly out of the Assassin's Golf swing with crow's wings now. By the way, yeah, that is the most popular video on this entire channel. It is just crazy huge. Not that it was a bad run or anything, but I never really... I'll tell you this, I wasn't really thinking when I was making it, oh yeah, this is gonna be the one. This is gonna be the video everybody's gonna want to watch. Really, at that point in time, I was just thinking, hey, this is kind of cool. Definitely one of my favorite things about this game is that things just change constantly. You're constantly getting new mechanics in it all the time. And crow's wings are a really weird one to introduce. This was not so much because I didn't have the money. Obviously, I did have the money. I wanted to get the heal there. That's one of the benefits of having alienation. Of course, with the 2-cell door right here, it doesn't really matter because, hey, there's a curse chest. Ugh. Should go without saying, colorless items gonna be kind of a thing in this run. Gonna be getting quite a few of them. And although I tried to use each weapon, you know, give it at least a fair shake, I kind of fell behind after the shove shield when it comes to using shields properly. To be fair, a lot of the time I was spending... Well, what was that even? A lot of the time I was spending cursed, so one wrong move, and really I think the main reason why I started playing really cautious here is because I recognized that I was maybe a couple frames away from getting chomped by that ugly worm and having the entire run be over. Oh no, this is the current version of the crow's wings. I just noticed because you can see me floating ever so slowly, because it used to be that, boy, if that ugly worm exploded in just a slightly different way. Yeah, it used to be that you would always stay at the same height while using the crow's wings, and now, not so much. You float down slowly. Which is why I don't know if that would mean that you're immune to the Gulf Swing from the Assassin, which I would say is maybe the best thing that I found that you could do with the crow's wings. I don't think there's any other sticky a stickier situation you could possibly get yourself out of. Man. Had a request to do phaser only run. And the crow's wings here, you can see you have the fire a volley of arrows. That would make it possible to do something like a phaser only or a bear trap only or something. One of those. And I seriously consider it, but then I think, wait a second, that's stupid. Also, that was a pretty baller parry that I got there. Not to pat myself on the back too hard. I wanted to go the hardest route possible for this run, but I opted not to and go into the ramparts instead of the old sewers because it's very possible that I could have gotten a slow weapon, a broadsword, a war spear or something, and there are too many exploding bats in that area for me to... And no guarantee that I would have any decent skill to deal with that either. So I think that you can still get to the Watcher from here, especially at this point where it was only a 1-cell door, but still annoying. Still really gotta wonder what they're gonna be doing for 4-cell doors. I hope it's a lot more. If they were planning to have more of the entrances into the other biomes, I would like to see that. Obviously, it's supposed to be something pretty special because it does take a 3-cell door at this point. The only area that has 2 3-cell doors now. Come on, Slasher. Ugh. Annoying. And here, I would say, is about the point where you start to really feel the... Now that, maybe not as good of a parry. This is the point where you really start to see some of the limitations for building for health as much as possible. And I think that... Oh boy. Everyone's favorite, the Spartan sandals. Yeah, I would much rather drop the Greed Shield than the Balance Blade, because Balance Blade is a good weapon, and, well, the Spartan Sandals are situational. I did an update of the the dive attack run. Yeah, I should do an updated Spartan Sandals. I could easily do that Spartan Sandals only, not doing the old plus stat equipment. Yeah, it could be something to do. Finally get all of the... Well, at least I was able to do that once. And here, it wasn't so much getting rid of the... Yeah, you can see the hesitancy with using the potion right there. Yeah, it wasn't really so much getting rid of the balance blade there, but I had used it enough. And same thing, Spartan Sandals, I used that enough. I kicked like 2 dudes off of into a pit with that. What are you saying, that wasn't enough? Ah, whatever. Yeah, if I'm taking Alienation, and especially if I'm going to be forced to take every single curse chest possible, there's no real reason why I need to heal with potions, kind of. Yeah, no way. Sepulcher is really the only choice that I could possibly have for a... If I need to be going this slowly through the game, the Sepulcher is really the only chance that I got at being able to get any one of the time doors. And even then... Well, you know, I'd actually say that it is really worth it to... Yeah, and eventually ended up getting that there anyway. Getting the potion usage. Whatever. You still get one after... Right before the assassin fight, you still get one right after the... After the Watcher or Incomplete one, so it's not that big of a deal. Multi-enemy as a mutation is maybe not the best one to go with, but it is definitely one that is usable. I'm less worried... In this sort of run, I was not as worried about... Oh, here's where I finally remembered that I had the frontline shield. Something which at some point I'm going to have to combo with a Spiteful Sword just to see how well it works. I'm betting pretty well. Those things seem like they would go right hand in hand. Yeah, you can see I always have multiple enemies near me at all points in time, which is why I thought, yeah, sure. And I'm not as worried about boss fights, especially if I were to manage to keep the heavy crossbow here. That's a pretty decent weapon against the Watcher. You can... It's not difficult to... Nonsense. But if you're going to use the frontline shield anywhere, I guess, it's... You take pretty minimal amount of damage from those things, the flying biters. Yeah, heavy crossbow, even at this fairly low of survival or tactics, survival is obviously what I'm going with here. Well, until now. You still get some pretty decent damage out of it, and it's pretty easy to position yourself to take out some of the tentacles in the Watcher fight. At least compared to a lot of weapons that you could use against the Watcher. Similarly, his big, huge body is pretty prime location to land all 5 of the heavy crossbow bolts if you got the chance to do that. Man, I gotta do a heavy crossbow run one of these days. It's a weapon which I like, but I never think is good enough to use in a lot of the runs that I do. Because the spread is big, and if you're fighting a smaller enemy, you have to be really up in their face. You have to be very careful about your ammo usage, all that. Yeah, frontline shield, thanks but no thanks. It's not nearly as good when you're playing in 3-cell mode. Because nullifying all damage with a parry is way more useful, which you get out of every other shield, than taking a bit less damage. Well, at least in my opinion, I can't really speak for anybody that can play this game. Frontline shield is another one that I gotta give a bit more of a chance. I'm sure with the cell difficulty, I could easily do another I could easily do another challenge run only with that and be able to manage to complete it this time. Ah, hell, I probably could have done that the first time that I attempted a frontline shield run, but the goal in that video, I remember, was to see if I could just beat the game standing still. Not necessarily... Yeah, wrench is the obvious choice to be able to kick those crossbow. I mean, like I said, the ammo is one of the most important things. So why did I not just reset everything and take double ammo and then go with wrench? That's a good question. I don't remember. But get some decent damage out of that, even with the... You could see that last hit that the Hayabusa boots did, which I think was due to wrench? I don't know. And hey, phaser for once. Maybe I will try that phaser only run. Sounds goofy nonsense enough that it would be kind of fun to do. I'm slowly running out of the most goofiest nonsense sort of runs to do, so maybe space them out a little bit, or maybe get them all out of the way just for funzos immediately. Biter only is one that I'm looking forward to that I gotta do eventually. Yeah, like I said, one of the helpful things with using a heavy crossbow is that tentacles, when they burst up from the ground, are large and immobile. So it's pretty easy to nail with them with all 5 of the bolts. Wait, is it 5 or 6? Ah, whatever. Phaser is super goofy when you're fighting the Watcher. You can see. I mean, any sort of big, really large or flying enemy, phaser definitely does work, but in a strange way. Not bad. Not the best, but This is also the only boss fight that you're going to be able to get any usage out of the multiple enemies or any sort of effect you get from killing an enemy, because I think this is the only boss fight with any sort of other enemy in it. It is always interesting to think how simple the Incomplete One fight is. No projectiles, no flying, no frills, really. It's just a lot of big melee attacks. Shockwave is the closest, well, Shockwave in the damage field is the closest that he gets to doing anything particularly fancy. Like the Watcher has adds, he's got all these moves, bullet hell attacks. Assassin obviously has tons of stuff going on. Watcher's just a big, huge dude that you hit a bunch of times and he hits back. Graveyard. On 3-cell difficulty with the foggers, with the defenders, with everything. It's just a treat to go through. And of course, the biggest thing I'd say is having to go immediately. Well, not only having to go through the graveyard, but also having to go through the sepulcher because you have absolutely no choice immediately afterwards. And that's why I wasn't too bummed out about taking the ramparts, because I knew that there's going to be difficult enough areas to get through after the Watcher goes down. Wow, I cannot believe I got hit there. Dang. Yeah, I'm at full potions, which, you know, in retrospect, probably not that necessary to stay stingy with these things, but that's... Hey, in 3-cell mode, that's how I play. See, there you go. Even though I recorded this a month ago, I knew that I was just at that point to being able to... Well, I was just at that breaking point where I knew I would want to use a potion. It's strange how surprisingly consistent I am when playing this game. That's why I gotta do these challenge runs, because otherwise I'm just going to play the game in the exact same way every single time. Which, hey, I don't know, maybe there's an audience for that, but I don't think that it's nearly as large as people that would want to see something a little bit more original. That is something that I always notice that you eventually get into when it comes to playing any sort of, roguelike or any sort of game. It's that what happens is you get kind of into a flow chart. You start up the game, you say, okay, I'm going to take this, this, and this. I'm going to take all of the devil deals on the second floor. Can't even afford anything anyway. Well, meat skewer. Gonna take devil deals on the second floor, gonna re-roll every single item until I get a damage up, and then I'm going to go directly to the chest because that's where you get 4 new items from. And trying to change it up with every single episode is how I at least am attempting to avoid going into that. How well does it work? I don't know. That's up for you to decide. One important thing to note with this run is that part of the rules that I set out here were that if I happen to die in this run, that I would go by the same rules, the exact same rules. However, I wouldn't need to explore every corner of every biome because it's... Well, you already see how long this video is. You can imagine how that would get if I was dying over and over and over. So it's still use what you see in that exact same way. However, I'm just not, exploring every inch of the level. Got the meat skewer right now. Which I had somebody point out to me. I do not remember I think it was in the meat skewer only run back when it was originally introduced in the daily update. That meat skewer is not a bad weapon at all, and I can see exactly where they're coming from. It has higher than normal. Base damage, and the big hit at the end is very similar to a... sorry, heavy crossbow. You did me good, but I've got enough use out of you for some time at least. And the end hit is a lot like a really powerful broadsword hit. And I can kind of see that. I'm still on record as not liking it too much because I'm not a huge fan of... Oh, come on, that's not considered enough for critical strike. Also, that may have been the other closest time that I've been to being killed this run. And it was entirely unnecessary, too. I could have just went and killed a couple bats. Good God, why do... Ugh. One of the reasons why I did this run post-commentary in the first place was because I kept forgetting what the rules were, and I was just not playing good enough with the weird builds that I would get to, manage to pass this, or to beat this run in any reasonable amount of time. This was a tough one. Begs the question of, why did I take so long to just throw a little bit of post-commentary on it and finally give it... Oh, come on. Finally release it? I don't know. I think it's because it's just so long. For any sort of non-Dead Cells video, probably not super long, I would say, if you look at the other stuff on the channel. But for a Dead Cells video, this is a big one. At least this build with the Aura of Laceration is... Oh, that's a no good. And not even able to rally up, like, a fraction. Of course, maybe the ballsiest attempt to heal that I've made in quite a while. At least I abandoned that plan pretty quickly to... Oh, wow, what a great defender there. Jeez. Alright, see, that's where the old... Not going to try to fight everything in the run comes from. You know, going through the portal would probably be considered exploring every nook and cranny of the biome, but I'm really not very good at doing that. At doing challenge rooms, and I think at this point that, oh boy. Got lucky with the second single hit point save there. Yeah, I knew that this part was going to be I knew that this route was going to be difficult, but this isn't really a bad makeup for... It's not really a bad makeup for this area. I do have Aura of Laceration and Cluster Bomb, which are both pretty decent at taking out the bats, kamikaze bats, corpse spiders that you're going to encounter, killing a bunch of the... Oh, could have gotten comboed there to death really easily. Corpse spiders that you're going to get killing a bunch of the host zombies. Man, I gotta go grab that item, and you gotta do it. It's part of the run. Ugh. Yeah, and getting all those colorless items is definitely not helping me as far as surviving with this low of health. Yeah, what is that, a phaser? Which, again, not a great one. It would have definitely helped a lot if I opted to... I have said so many times that I think the Fast Fingers, the cooldown reduction mutation, is maybe one of the best mutations in the entire game. It would have really been a good idea. Also, I like the buffing brothers sitting right next to each other there. Good job, guys. Would have definitely been a much better choice than something like... I think that's just called melee? The mutation that gives you extra damage when you're next to multiple... I don't know. I've said before, there was no real plan going into this run. At least I managed to get pyrotechnics, which is maybe my favorite item at this point in the game. And is probably going to be that way, at least until the next update. And if they don't happen to change up tactics, I don't see any reason not to continue rolling with it. Extra damage from... I mean, you can get tranquility bonus, you can get extra damage from oil, which can come in a bunch of different flavors when it comes to skills. You can get oil deployment with deployable traps, with grenades, with obviously the oil grenade. And extra damage after you light it on fire. And additionally, you don't have to worry about ammunition being a thing. You can fire that as many times as you want and it'll never run out. So that is... Oh boy, the Architect's Key. As important as that is, I'm surprised that that kick does so little damage. I would have thought that would have been a kill, or at least very close to that at this point. I guess I really am building a lot for... health at this point with the stat distribution that I got. Trying to get some sort of use out of any weapon that I pick up, which in retrospect, maybe not the best idea. Classic classic trap hit there. Because really, going for tactics and brutality would have been the clear choice. Because the only purely survival items that you can get in the game are all shields. Everything else is going to be scaling with at least tactics or... Now here's a great chance to get a curse chest. Oh yeah, there's also a food area in this. Wow, I totally forgot. That was so low that taking, what is that, 15, 30, 80% health refill was still not enough to get me back up to max. Whew. Oh well, at least here's a good opportunity to heal. Definitely the time to... Oh, hey, a Hokuto's bow. Great. Yeah, that's one that's super useful. Boy, I hope I don't get that like 3 to 5 more times. This is some risky play here. But going into the unknown is perhaps even riskier, so I don't know. Life is what you make of it. Vis-a-vis riskiness. But yeah, thinking about it, probably should have just gone with tactics and brutality. Shields are the only thing that you could have benefited from having a large survival stat with, so it makes absolutely no sense to. Yeah, any heavy weapon is also going to scale with brutality. Skills are going to be scaling with tactics always. There's... the only reason I'm opening up golden doors is to get to items, not to get to more cells. I suppose I didn't say that at the very start, but that's true now. I think even during the run I was thinking, oh man, I'm going to have to mention that. You know, I think I also never properly used the Architect's Key. Oh, that's too bad. I mean, it's just more money at this point because I already have the blueprint, but hey, you know, you don't get the Architect's Key that often. Or at least I don't, because I'm not in the graveyard all that often, 1, and 2, you gotta look for it. It's a whole production for an extra, what? So what is that, the 5th or 6th time that I've gotten hit by one of the catcher chains? God. That's a whole production just to get an extra 1,000 gold or something. So maybe not that big of a deal in my opinion. Aside from that, should be ending up the graveyard pretty soon. This place is big, winding, full of a lot of very difficult enemies, but hey, at least it's nearly over and I'm nearly into a place that's potentially even bigger, more winding, and definitely filled with more enemies. More dangerous? Well, there's not foggers in there, so I would almost argue not as dangerous. It's also not enemies that will be catching me, as their namesake would imply. Oh yeah. Wait, I do not go to the graveyard enough. I didn't even remember that there is a food shop and a cell container in here. Jeez. I still don't think that makes it worth it to go into here, but that's 40% extra damage taken now. Well, not quite, because the Hokuto's bow does give me some extra damage reduction, but you slap 2 times damage on that, and it's not looking great. I'm just lucky that I didn't find a 4 times damage modifier, because that would be maybe an issue. And here's also the point where you may be thinking, well, why didn't I go get rid of the curse before I went to the next area? Yes, and here's where I finally realized, yeah, maybe having that cooldown reduction would be good. This is another result of... I didn't even remember taking this, but man, I play this game way too consistently sometimes. Well, anyway, the reason why I didn't go back is because, well, foggers, and I'd been getting hit by the catcher chains way too much at the... Oh, did I forget to pick up the nightlight? Yep, you bet I did. Not bad damage, but... Well, hey, I'm cursed, so... Also, you can see some Inquisitors sniping me from places where I can't even see. Ugh. Yeah, not so fast. Graveyard's a big area to go through. Yeah, if those Inquisitors happen to peg me from up... Well, if that Inquisitor right there happened to peg me while I was down on the bottom, that would have been bad. And as you can see, there were a bunch of little trackers to hit right at the start here, which is kind of what I was expecting to happen when going into the Sepulcher. I knew it was going to be an unknown area, but I knew that I wouldn't have to worry about a bunch of projectiles, just a bunch of little tiny dudes there to deal with, which are melee only, and I feel a bit more confident in getting at. Although that Inquisitor got pretty close, so... Yeah, that could have easily broke bad. Let's just say that and be glad that it didn't. And the Sepulcher. I believe all 3 cell doors lead to curse chests, which means that I have to take all 3 of them. And hey, I got enough money to get a full new set of items. Tonic, pretty good for the Sepulcher. That'll protect against a little bit of darkness damage, at least for a second. Cluster Grenade, yeah, that's alright. I've been getting that one surprisingly often, too. I guess I don't mind as much, because it's a pretty good item, but I don't know. Not quite. Yeah, taking multiple curses here too is also going to be a... There's not too many characters that can do range attacks, but between the Inquisitors and the Shockers, that's going to be an issue. Well, between everything, this place is just a death trap. Ah, come on, right as I was dropping through the area. You know, before they introduced the ability to... Yep, didn't even want to risk it there. I already got hit once. Yeah, before they introduced the ability to climb up walls, I would say that climbing up chains, climbing up... Well, it's usually chains that you're climbing up. Was probably the most dangerous thing that you could possibly do in the game, because that left you very much open for attack. Now I think it's dropping through platforms, because more and more often I find myself getting, you know, either pushed around by enemies as I'm trying to drop through a platform, or ooh, that was way too close. Yeah, getting myself pushed around as I'm trying to drop through platforms, or getting hit as I'm dropping through platforms. Oh, that double damage is really not doing me any favors at this point. So yeah, just dropping through platforms. Most dangerous game. It's like, man. Oh boy, an explosive crossbow. Now, I think that this may be at the point where they hadn't fixed it yet. I don't remember. I think at this point I made the decision to keep the powerful electric whip, not so much because it's very powerful, but more because, hey, oh, this is also the point where I remembered, oh geez, I never actually took the nightlight. I gotta do that. Yeah, see, run's not invalidated. Kind of. Yeah, I did replace a useless item with that. Okay, yeah, and fine. Strip me of my title, take me off the leaderboard. That's fine, that's reasonable. But yeah, it's not so much getting the extra damage out of the electric whip, it's the idea that if I get cursed, I am going to die. Well, being cursed, I'm going to die if I take a single hit, so I might as well take something with as much damage as possible and then worry about getting rid of it after that. Thankfully, getting hit with darkness damage does not curse you. Not that I need to worry about that anyway, but it's a good thing to remember? I don't know. If you're doing a lot of 3-cell runs where you run through the sepulcher, holy crap, don't do that. That's a really bad idea. But if you are, I guess just keep in mind that if you want to grab some of those juicy curse chests, you don't have to worry about dying from darkness damage, just all the enemies around you. Or the traps. You know, pretty much anything that's not darkness damage. It is pretty nice that I do get to keep the Architect's Key along with me. Come on, it looks like a little bell. I bet if you shook it, it would make like a little chiming noise. It'd be cute. Well, doing a full, well, not a full clear, but a full explore of all the areas does at least get me ample opportunity for... No, I don't think they had fixed the explosive crossbow at this point, judging by the amount of damage that it did there. Ooh, that's not good. Well, that could have been much worse if I did happen to actually get hit by the shocker, but still. Oh, and here's the next curse chest. At least I believe this is... Yeah, they're all 3 curse chests. It looked like for a second there I was about to... Even as I dropped that, I knew that it was kind of a bad idea, but I had way too many close calls, especially with the shocker there too, that I didn't even want to risk it. Besides, hey, you can drop that nightlight, which apparently you can't sell. Huh. For a heavy grenade, which is an item that I don't really like all that much. I prefer the infantry grenade in every single... I think that beats out the heavy grenade in just about every respect. Ugh. Yeah, with the low damage that I got here, I gotta play this. Oh, God! Yep. Round 2. Hey, I managed to get a Hokuto's bow. Again. And it's colorless. Again. Ah, this game. But since like I said, with the rules being that I didn't need to explore every corner of the biome, I managed to get here with enough time to get the time door. Cannot tell you how bummed I was to get killed by that spinner there. If you notice that I may have been harping a bit on the fact that spinners can fall off the edges of platforms. Also, boy, there is a lot of stuff going on here. And it's pretty much entirely because of that incident you saw right there. And here I got the mutation that gives me extra healing from food items, which is definitely going to help quite a bit, as it already has. And I nearly forgot to take the nightlight again, but don't worry about that. But yeah, that was the reason why I would say more than ever I started noticing that yes, spinners do fall off of platforms, and that's kind of an issue, because that was a great run. For all of the ridiculous shenanigans that had happened throughout that, I was managing to pull that off pretty well right up until that... And I was trying to be very careful about it too. Man. Ah, well. I mean, life goes on. Anyway, this is not a very good mix-up of items, as you can probably tell here. Pretty low damage. Hey, it's a colorless firebrands, but man, colorless firebrands. Firebrands is an item that's really only good for setting up combinations with other items. If you wanted to get like a skill or some other weapon that benefits off of enemies being on fire, whether it's a flammable sword or something that gets, man, all these stats right next to each other. Whether it's something that gets 100% damage on burning, something that deploys oil, whatever. But for doing damage itself, I would not say that it's the best item. Oh, but it's colorless, so I take extra damage while using it and get very little benefit from it because I believe that brutality is my highest stat anyway. Not that it matters because they're all pretty similar. Oh, well, there's always a point where I don't think I used the nightlight even once in either of the runs so far. Great stuff. I guess firebrands could do decent damage if you stacked up a whole ton of burns, but not likely. Just say that. And yeah, taking 40% extra damage, though again with a Hokuto's bow reducing some of that, but... And the fire grenade too. So that's nice, but I don't know. There is one decent combination I do have out of this, and it is using the Ivy Grenade with Firebrands, because that allows me to stack up a whole ton of burn, because the trackers do not have much ability to get out of. They will try rolling, and I think they can teleport, but they might be able to teleport out of snares. I don't quite know exactly, though. I know they can't roll out of it, where they try to do the combat roll behind you. And that will pretty much entirely neutralize the guys, but that's about it. And getting the ice grenade is even better for keeping enemies still, so... Not that it really matters, because now I got a decent... Well, it's not a great damage dealer, but it's certainly better than Firebrands. Bow and Infinite Arrows has fairly low damage, but it's better than Firebrands? Hey, that's use what you see. That is the magic of use what you see. You never know what you're gonna get. And what you're gonna get is usually pretty bad. Oh, come on. Well, at least got a big hallway here, and utilizing a... Ooh, that could have been bad. Yeah, I got a big hallway here, and utilizing the ranged attacks that I have is... Well, it's something. It's not nothing. I might have to do another little use what you see run at some point, because I'm realizing here just how... I guess that was not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. And got a straight upgrade from the necklace, so that's good too. Did I have a necklace in the last run? I don't even remember now. Kind of surprising if I didn't. You can see when you're not doing a full clear of the entire area that don't have nearly as many cells. I had, what, 491 last time, I think? Fun fact, Whoa, that was close. Fun fact, the most amount of cells that I held at any one time was actually the run that was the casual cell grinding run. That video on the channel. 669. I have never gotten more than that at any point in time. Of course, for the most part, I was either spending cells as I got to the first foundry dude, or I'm not trying to go for cells on 3 boss cells run. So, not too surprising. But hey, come on, admit it, you had some fun with that fact. Alright, anyway, back to reality. Oh. The grenades are definitely good for taking out the bats. I don't think they're great for dealing damage on anything else. They're definitely great for dealing damage on anybody's eyes that are watching this with the amount of flashing that's going on. But flame grenade, oh, that was, yeah, I couldn't even tell that there was a meat grinder blade there. Got sniped by that pretty handily. That's what happens when you got a lot of screen clutter at once. Yeah, fire grenade is not really meant to do damage. That is why it is an item that you get damage reduction from. It's more meant to set up other combinations. A lot of things that deal straight fire damage are mostly meant to set up combinations rather than being used by themselves. But you can get, like something like pyrotechnics, for example, you can get a lot of damage out of, depending on your build, with tranquility, anything that deploys oil, anything that you get extra damage. I've never said this before, but it still holds true even now. I think the CC is going to be better than taking the fire grenade anyway. Well, not that it really matters because, hey, new items, bring them in. Well, I had the ice grenade for the longest anyway, so I don't see what that... I said this before, but I am technically supposed to be using, like, each item I get. It's not just, when I say use what you see, I don't mean have it in my inventory until I find the most opportunity to drop it off and never actually use it. I do at least try to use it. Well, at least it's a heal. And hey, come on, wrenching whip's not bad. Certainly better than the Hokuto's bow is doing me right now. You know, when you think about it, colorless Hokuto's bow is maybe one of the best items that you can get in the game. If you were building brutality with it, well, actually it scales with brutality. There's where I remembered that guy can fall off the edge, and he didn't do it anyway, but still. Least I remembered? I don't know where I'm going with this. Yeah, it feels like whipping the... Thank God I got rid of the curse there. Feels like maybe whipping spinners towards you is not the best course of action, but what are you gonna do? I mean, it's not like I'm gonna whip them away from me, which I guess that would technically be the Impaler. That would be the Impaler's shtick. I don't know, push and pull mechanics in this game are something that I think Motion Twin could very easily revisit, and I would be happy to see that. Shelf Shield kind of got a buff when it gained the ability to, hey, nice, counter shield. And I'm not calling it parry shield this time. Yeah, Shelf Shield technically got a buff at the point where they introduced criticals for shields. where it did double the amount of pushing when you Elite Inquisitor. I'm not even worried about that. Hey! Oh boy! Remember when I said I was going to be getting a lot of those? Well, that's just fantastic, because I had a really decent build for fighting the assassin, and then I knew if I ever got chain grabbed that I would have been able to get out of that lickety-split. But no, a Hokuto's bow is great. That's just what I need. I guess what I'm saying is that they could easily rework the wrenching whip, which the wrenching whip has just been a decent whip always. I would like to see more stuff with the whole wrenching part of it, but I feel like that's never really been a priority of Motion Twin to get that working. Same with the Impaler, which I think could use a lot more pushing if pushing is supposed to be one of the things it does. I don't know. Maybe someday. Anyway, I think I'm finally finishing up the old sepulcher. Yep, there's the end right there, and that should be most everything checked out, so this would probably also be an opportune time to hit a guy with the Hokuto's bow, which kind of not that much more damage. Meat Grinder is pretty effective on those guys because they never leave the ground, so guess didn't really need that all that much. One last check to see if there's any other places that I need to go, and going. Oh, this is not the best setup to fight the assassin with, should go without saying. Honestly, probably should have very nearly forgot that. Honestly, probably should have gone with emergency triage because that is always great. And I have 2 charges for this, which means that I could have easily gone in, popped that immediately, done a ton of damage, popped another one, or waited until I got chain grabbed, maybe. You know, I said not the most ideal. This is pretty alright as far as damage goes. It would probably help if I was not getting hit by melee attacks. Thankfully, the pushback on the Shuriken Storm there made it so I wasn't getting hit by that constantly, because otherwise that could have been a big issue. And also something I don't think I've ever mentioned is that turrets do block the... Oh, that's not good. Turrets do block the Shuriken hit. Come on. Meaning that throwing down a turret can be a good little meat shield against that particular attack, which is pretty nice. Why did I get another Hokuto's bow? Why couldn't I have gotten that counter shield? It would have been so useful right now. Because you can get so many hits out of any... Ah, well, there goes the... Man, those turrets are not lasting very long. Oh, crap. And there's where I realized that I didn't have any more flask charges. And here's where I realized I'm dead. So this is a better one. One that... Man, getting hit by 3 chain grabs, that's ridiculous. This was a while ago, though, so I wasn't nearly as good as fighting with the assassin. So somewhat understandable, maybe? I don't know. Should go without saying that I definitely use the shield a lot more in this one. Having felt the sting of going without the counter shield in the last one. Yeah, I was saying, you can get so many hits out of parrying back a... Also an emergency triage this time. You can get so many hits out of parrying back those shurikens. It's just so good, especially with the counter shield. Well, anyway, having a war spear is not the most ideal sort of weapon to take into this, but you can hit from just barely outside of her melee range and hit into it with the war spear alone. I think I also said this in the 3-cell when I was doing the survival build, that the assassin fight is definitely the one time that you get the full benefit out of the alleged range that the war spear has, rather than the hitting multiple enemies deal. Besides, I also managed to have a lot more healing at this time, and emergency triage helps a lot too. And there you go. Use what you see. Something I might revisit in the future. It was a decently fun run, but it was also very difficult and took a very long time to do. Maybe I'll relieve myself of the rule that I need to explore every inch of each of the biomes, but aside from that, I think it was pretty good. Pretty good little run.